Welcome, fantasy managers, to the first ever edition of Fantasy Football Backers Live. This is GW22. Almost 2 p.m. here, so we've got team news coming up soon.
Fantasy Football Backers Live. This is GW1099. Almost 2 p.m.
Mute this. So a little different today. We're going to try to not abandon you right before lineups come out, and typically we get our content out a lot earlier, and then some of it's not relevant. For instance, last week I had Shaqiri as my headline picture on the article, and he ended up not playing. So that's kind of a big gap. Not going to be able to do this every week, but wanted to test it out, see if there's demand. So if you're watching this even after words and you like the format and you think it's helpful, then definitely let us know, and we'll try to do this more regularly. I do think it'll be helpful to to look at the lineups, to talk about things. We've got a chat here as well, so if you want to ask me some questions, I can try to get you some answers. I'm going to be scrambling to make my own teams as it is. But this seems like a day where I'll probably just use one team on Draftkings, and I should be able to manage that. And I'll also make a fake team on Mondogoal, but as you know, I'm not allowed to play there at the moment. So I'm happy to help you out on your Mondogoal teams. No skin off my back. So we got team news here coming in a few minutes. We're going to cover the 3 p.m. games, and then Villa hosting Leicester, which is really going to be interesting because I would think that Vardy will play. I don't want to plant that seed too much. They got to win every game, and I think that they'll have to play their best players. Whether he plays 90, I don't know. I think it's a tricky fixture for Leicester. I think Villa is, they're sort of in the same position that Leicester was in last season, where it looks dire. It looks like it's pretty much over for them as far as staying up. But Leicester had a little bit more firepower than Villa does this season. But it was it was interesting, and it could be a tough fixture with the game at Villa Park. So I don't know how much Leicester I'm going to have. That's the one lineup that we won't have is Leicester, and then Villa. Verito might be a decent play from there. So those are the kind of the players that I'm looking at there. I would use Vardy and Mahrez, of course, here. I would use Fuchs. I would use Albrighton coming back to Villa Park. If you're on DraftKings and a guy like Damari Gray ends up in the lineup, that's a pretty interesting option to look at as well. So let's see here. It's almost 3 p.m., so we've almost got our lineups here. Looking at the slate, Chelsea is going to be a team to look at. Chelsea and Everton could end up in a very high-scoring match, which I don't know that we would have predicted that before the season, but that seems to be the way that things are playing out. Manchester City should score. They've been expected to score recently and haven't been, so that's interesting. Newcastle West Ham is a big match. Southampton made news this morning that they've signed Charlie Austin, which I wonder if that spells the end of Pella there. Pella, he's been injured, but getting Charlie Austin is probably a good move. He's a pretty clinical finisher for QPR, and he's got Premier League experience and has been doing it. So I think that could be a very good move for Southampton. As we've seen, they've struggled to score. So all right, so we've got some team news coming out. I use an app called 442. On my phone, they tend to do a pretty good job of getting the lineups quickly and relatively accurately. But most of these team news sheets come just in a list of names, and they're doing their best to put them in the formation that they think they're going to play, which can be tricky. You got to kind of think to yourself sometimes if something doesn't look like it makes any sense whatsoever. Consider that it might be wrong. But let's start with Bournemouth. Oh, and there's a goal for Tottenham. We are live here. I promised that. That's a big goal. So Tottenham takes a 2-1 lead. So for Bournemouth, we've got Baruch in goal. That's not a surprise. Adam Smith is still out at right back. Francis and Cook playing center backs, and then Daniels at left back. So not a surprise there. We've got Sermon playing deep in the midfield. Pugh out on the right for Richie. So Richie was not able to go. That was kind of a toss-up and will be a big component to today's match, because this is a good matchup with Norwich. Gosling and Arter in the middle, and then Stanislas out left. Afobe up top. So Afobe got the call again with Iturbe, another option. He's on the bench. Murray is also on the bench. So Afobe becomes a bit of a gamble. I think it's a good spot for him with Norwich. He didn't do much last week. He's relatively inexpensive on both Draftkings and Mondogoal. But you've got two potential replacements behind him. Iturbe could also come in for Pugh. That was kind of the position that he was expected to occupy today. So the safest play to me is going to be Stanislas. He could take all the corners on Bournemouth, which on Draftkings is big. He's certainly going to be asked to attack. So I think Stanislas is going to be a great play. Pugh is probably going to be a low-owned play. Not many people will be on him, but I think he's a solid selection. Afobe, even Baruch, if you don't trust Norwich. And then Adam Smith has cooled off a little bit, but I wouldn't be opposed to using him here. So let's move on to Norwich's lineup. Less interested in this lineup, so I'm not going to focus on this quite as much. You got Robbie Brady at left back. When that happens, he kind of becomes out of play. For me, I just don't think that the upside is there, and his price is caught up on DraftKings. He's not really a play, regardless on Mondogoal, because he's listed as midfielder playing back, so he's not going to get those full clean sheet points. Ojijo Afo has been playing kind of the right wing. He's an interesting play. I'm going to see how much he is on Mondogoal right now. Came through with an assist. Seems like he is in decent favor there now. He's very cheap on DraftKings. Wasn't sure if he was going to play. He's 5.7 million on Mondogoal, so that's a pretty reasonable price if you need to save money there. Bournemouth is a decent defense. They've been playing pretty well, so I wouldn't go overboard with him. And then we've got Jarvis out on the left wing, Houlihan and then Mbokani. I'm not interested in those guys. So Jarvis, possibly. Jarvis, he in the past he's taken some free kicks and corners from Brady, and may do the same today. He's very inexpensive on DraftKings, and I can't imagine too many people are going to take him. He's 5.1 million on Mondogoal. So, see how the rest of these lineups look. But for Norwich, I would definitely look at Ojijo Afo and Jarvis, and I'd probably leave Brady out. So that's first game down. Going to the bridge now. Nothing new here. Fabregas playing behind Costa, but he's just been so ineffective for fantasy purposes that he's a bit of a leap of faith. He's also gotten inexpensive, though. So I think, if you're playing GPPs on DraftKings, he's in play. On Mondogoal, he's still 9.4 million, which is not particularly interesting to me. But you know, something could happen if they're able. They should be able to score on Everton. So if you think that is the case, then Fabregas is a pretty solid play. Willian at 12.3 million has gotten expensive on Mondogoal. Pedro, I'm kind of done with. And then Costa up top, I think will be popular, even though he blanked last week or midweek, I should say. Courtois and Ivanovic are in play. I don't think that I'll end up on either of them just because I think Everton will be able to score. So let's look at their lineup now. Oh, they've got Oviedo at right back, which is a Draftkings play, and big time on Draftkings right now is you need to save money. There's so few midfielders you're going to want to get. So getting Oviedo in at right back is definitely big. He's cheap. He's I think let's see, he's 2,200 on DraftKings. He's 6.7 million on Mondogoal, which is not quite as interesting. Let's see here on DraftKings. Yeah, he's 2,200. At 2,200, it's hard for him to go too far wrong, even if Chelsea has the majority of possession. Lennon at right wing and Morales on the other side. Morales is very inexpensive on DraftKings, and he is not a shy player, as we know. So he should be able to pay off his salary pretty easily. He's 8.4 million on Mondogoal. I think that it's probably more of a differential than it is a cash game play, but I will definitely be looking at Morales and Oviedo here. It is Chelsea though, so it's not a matchup you want to go overboard on, but definitely decent here. So let's move on. Go to the Etihad. See if there's anything interesting going on for Manchester City. All right, we got Zabaleta back at right back. His price has never really come down. We got Kolarov at left back in play. De Bruyne on the right wing. Silva at the 10, and Iheanacho playing for Sterling out on the left wing. I don't know that I've seen enough from him to really be confident in taking him. That said, he's only 3,200 on DraftKings, and forward is not a place you really want to be spending money, just because it's, at least for cash games, it's just not very consistent. I'd like to see, and then we've got a third goal, Christian Eriksen for the Spurs. So that game is over. Iheanacho, I mean, it looks like, his scoring is essentially goal or bust when he's played. He's not played, a ton of minutes. I can't imagine that he really even gets much more than 45, maybe 60 at the most. So he's a considerable risk at 3,200. That said, he's playing in one of the attacking positions for the highest projected scoring team on the slate. So that's definitely somebody who I'm going to have to take a long look at here for City. Let's see what Zavaleta is checking in at these days. He's 2,700 on DraftKings. That's pretty inexpensive, but he's not really piling up the crosses like he once did. 8.3 million on Mondogoal. All right, so Palace, they haven't scored, I believe, in 4 weeks. Wickham up top, Cabaye behind him, punching and Zaha on the wings. If you're playing on DraftKings, Cabaye is an okay play. I just don't see Palace piling up a bunch of corners. I actually like Hart as my keeper this week, I believe, just because I think Palace is pretty ineffective. It's a decent lineup, though. So it's not going to be easy, but I think that at least on DraftKings, City should be able to get the win, and we'll see what happens from beyond there. We don't have companies, so expecting a clean sheet is probably too optimistic. Next, we've got Newcastle and West Ham. Let's see here. Elliott in goal is expected. Shelby did make it. He's playing defensive mid, back where he was with Swansea. He's a very interesting play here today because I think they should have a fair amount of the ball against West Ham at home. He should be on corners and free kicks. Certainly, he'll be on free kicks that are indirect. Some of those deeper kicks. Corners, he's going to be battling with Ayoze Perez, who's out on the left wing here. I think more than anything, I'm probably going to leave them both alone. Typically, I would take Ayoze Perez in this spot, but I think Shelby is a big enough concern that if Perez loses his corner kicks on DraftKings, then he loses a lot of value. I think that Newcastle sort of has one of those lineups here that it makes me not really want any of their players. They're all kind of similar to me. Wijnaldum, you're still paying for his 4-goal effort. And I'm going to be wrong on Wijnaldum pretty often, so take it with a grain of salt. He's got 8 goals and 2 assists on the season. He draws some fouls, but I don't want to pay nearly $10 million on Mondogoal for a player that just seems random. He's not taking a lot of shots, and his conversion rate's extremely high. He just has a low floor, and I'm not into those type of players when I can avoid it. West Ham. We got Enter Valencia up top. We've got Payet out on the right, which for DraftKings, I mean, he's going to be nearly 100% owned after his last game anyways, but that's going to be a really good spot for him over there. And Antonio up on the left wing. I don't really like any of their other players, to be honest. I'm just not buying West Ham's away for him, despite overwhelming evidence that that it works. But I'll take Payet. Valencia is in play on DraftKings at forward. Just as I said, it's just not a place where you want to spend a lot of money. He did have 2 goals last match. If he hadn't had those 2 goals, he scores 3 points and probably sinks your team. But instead, he did the exact opposite. So, we've got reason to believe that that Valencia could blank here, but I wouldn't fault you for playing him either. Newcastle doesn't have much of a defense. So one more match here that we have lineups for: Southampton and West Brom. We got Target, which is another big DraftKings play. Forster's in as expected. Cedric. So this is showing Bertrand up on the left wing. I'm pretty sure that last time they showed this, and that wasn't really the case. That was brought to my attention by Wowcat77, my buddy Martin. Because Bertrand didn't do anything last match. Stephen Davis took most of the corners. Bertrand was pretty ineffective. So I'm going to try to double check here and see if I can get. So on Mondogoal, I think Bertrand probably is in play because he's got a good clean sheet option. Clean sheets are less relevant on DraftKings as a percentage of your scoring. Plus, you don't have the 1 goal allowed bonus anymore. So they really neutralized clean sheets on DraftKings. It's nice to get them the bonus at the end if it does come through, but 3 points isn't really gonna help that much. So, and I'm seeing Bertrand still kind of on a left wing back type role here. So I'm torn on that. I mean, it might have been just a down game last match. Typically we like our defenders playing a little bit further forward. But I don't know. I'm torn here. Target is a good play on DraftKings and probably on Mondogoal as well. Cedric is is typically a pretty solid. It seems like at this point this is the type of lineup. James Ward-Prowse is playing, so that for me ruins Stephen Davis on DraftKings. I don't know that Davis will take all the corners, and you've got Bertrand as well. So it's funny is I think this is a good matchup for Southampton. They should be able to score on West Brom, but I think that it would be tough to really pick who is going to do well here. I think for DraftKings, I think Target and probably Shane Long are two players that I'm going to look at pretty in depth. I'll probably leave Bertrand alone on Stephen Davis versus Ward-Prowse. So I'm probably out on those guys. Cedric, I could potentially play, but if I've got two defenders from Southampton, it's probably going to be Target and Bertrand, just because Cedric's price is pretty high. But you can definitely fire in a lot of crosses against West Brom, and Cedric has not been under 10 points on DraftKings in 7 straight matches. So it could be an all Southampton defense, or if you trust what happened last match, then I think Bertrand's probably going to be the one that has to go. So let me revise that. Target and Cedric, probably the two defenders I would use here. I would be willing to go with a defender in my util as well on DraftKings, just because I think Cedric is pretty safe. I like Fuchs a lot for Leicester later as well, and it's always nice to have somebody in the late match if you can. So let's take a peek at West Brom lineup. We're not really touching much of this, I don't believe, but they've had some value in their wingers. Got Anichebe up top, Sessegnon behind him. Sessegnon had a little run there where he was usable, but I don't think this is a good spot for him. And I like him more on the wing. McLean, and then Brunt is out. So without Brunt, that could mean Sessegnon actually takes corners again, which again puts him back in play. So McLean, I don't believe, has taken many corners. Let's see if I can look this up here. This is again more of a DraftKings play. I know that's not typically relevant to UK players, but it will be hopefully soon, assuming DraftKings does come over. But McLean's been really good when he's played, when he doesn't get a red card. I mean, he had a goal midweek. He's just crazy inexpensive on Mondogoal, but he does things like get red cards and get you negative 4.42, which he did about a month ago. But then last week he had 14 points because he scored a goal. Typically he's going to come in around 4 or 5 points, and that's fine for the price if you're saving money to pay up for somebody else. Let's take a peek here at West Brom. So as I said, I know Sessegnon was taking corners. He was splitting them with Brunt when they were playing together. I just want to see if Gardner, I guess, could be in the mix for corners. I don't know how many they're going to get against Southampton. So we'll see how that plays out. All right, so let's do a little review, and then Villa and Leicester. I guess you can look at projected lineups there. For Villa, I really like Verito at home. He's been taking the majority of set pieces and corners. Carlos Gil will probably play, and he can challenge him for those, which is a little bit frustrating. But then you've got Bakuna and Sissoko as your fullbacks. I think those on DraftKings are probably not necessary anymore. I liked them at one point to try to save a little bit of budget, but Oviedo and Target popping up, I don't know that that's necessary anymore. Ayew as a winger is probably a decent play. Not something I'm probably going to do on my cash team here, but as for Kane scores a penalty, so 4-1 after that early Van Aanholt goal. It false hope for Sunderland. So Leicester, with the value that is coming in, Leicester becomes a little bit more interesting. Mahrez, I mean, if you can afford him, he's one of the better plays. He's not a great value on Draftkings because he's so expensive, and if he doesn't score, he's going to get you single-digit points most likely, and that to me is considerably risky. Like I can read off his I think this is like his last 10 matches on DraftKings: 13, 15, 13. No goals there, 1 assist actually. So maybe his floor is a little bit higher, but 43, that was his hat trick. 27 was a goal and assist. 26 with 2 goals. But then his past 4 matches, we've got 6-5, 2-7, which if you're paying 8,400, you want De Bruyne's 20 crosses, not Mahrez's 5 or 6 points. But this is Villa. As I said, I do think it's a tricky fixture for Leicester. Villa's still a bad team, and Mahrez, because he's on penalty duty, could be in play. If you really wanted to go inexpensive with your forwards and your defense, I think you could probably try to squeeze Vardy in without missing out on De Bruyne or Payet. And I think that's fine. So, all right. So review. Anything interesting from Bournemouth? Stanislas should be on corner duty. Pugh is playing right wing. I don't think I'll take Adam Smith just because I think there's other options, but he's fine. Daniels looks like he would probably be still on penalty duty, so based on this lineup. So that's somebody to consider unless they give it to a Phobie, the new guy, who I also would consider a Phobie. I think, his floor could be tremendously low. We don't know whether his goal scoring is going to translate to the Premier League, but I think that's worth the gamble. Odijo Foe is a nice cheap option, both Mondogoal and DraftKings. Jarvis as well. For Chelsea, I think Costa up top, if you want to spend for a forward, is a fine play. I think on Mondogoal, he's probably 8.1 million. You kind of have to look at him. Obviously, he could get a red card in the first 20 minutes and ruin your day, but that's why he's also 8.1 million and not more than that. Pedro's out for me. I think he'll probably come off at 60, and he's just been pretty ineffective. Williams gotten a little expensive, but he's a decent selection. For Everton, there's some value in Morales and Oviedo if you think that Chelsea's defensive form is going to continue to struggle. Even Lukaku up top, former Chelsea youth team player. If you want to play that narrative, I don't think it really matters. For City, Zabaleta and Kolarov are the fullbacks. I like Hart as keeper. De Bruyne, Aguero are certainly good plays if you can afford them. And then Iheanacho playing left wing. As I said, I can't imagine he plays more than an hour, unless these guys need to be rested. Sterling is on the bench, so he would have to be pretty effective to play longer than an hour, I would imagine. Newcastle, Shelvey did make the lineup. Then you've got Sissoko, Wijnaldum, Ayoze, and Mitrovic. You've got Janmaat, Janmaat's probably a pretty good play as a right back. I left him off earlier, but against West Ham, that's pretty decent. Speaking of West Ham, we've got Payet and Michael Antonio on the wings, which are both good plays. Valencia up top. I'm probably not playing Valencia. His free kick goal from midweek would not have happened if Payet had played 90 minutes because he wouldn't have been taking it. Yeah, I don't know. I've got a bias against West Ham though. Still, I just don't think they're that great. But man, they played very well, and they've figured out a way to win. So I should probably start showing a little more respect. Then Southampton, no Charlie Austin yet, but that's an interesting signing. Long up top indicates that they're not particularly happy with Pella. Cedric and Target, Bertrand, Stephen Davis, Ward-Prowse. I don't know how things are going to get spread out there. Tadic not starting is a little frustrating. So I'm probably looking at Target and Cedric and maybe Forster as a keeper for West Brom. Sessegnon if he gets the corners, which I think he probably will. And then McLean is a pretty solid Mondogoal play, which allows you to pay up. And if you're going to pay up on Mondogoal, I think Mahrez is a good play. De Bruyne, Aguero, Costa, guys like that. I think you can probably fit Phoebe as well if you don't like the other forwards. So, all right. Well, I don't want to ramble on too much longer here. It's about half an hour before kickoff, so hopefully that was helpful. Let me know. It's a little more information that you can actually act on than when we write stuff a few days before and then becomes inconsequential. Hopefully I can get somebody to join me here if we do this again. But best of luck in game week 22. This is Fantasy Football Backers live show signing off.